We interrupt this program to bring you an important Wayfair message. Wayfair's got style tips for every home. This is Styles McKenzie helping you make those rooms sing. Today's style tip. When it comes to making a statement, treat bold patterns like neutrals. Go wild, like an untamed animal print area rug under a rustic farmhouse table from Wayfair.com. Arr, fierce. This has been your Wayfair style tip to keep those interiors superior.
Wayfair, every style, every home.
Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media, AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. And don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. I have a story up now about the players' reaction and just the organization's reaction to the Marshon Lattimore trade. And as Bobby Wagner said, it certainly lets them know that this organization thinks it can win now. So that's on ESPN.com. Also, before I get to my conversation with ESPN Sal Pal Knows It, just a reminder for you club members, the gold members get the private Zoom session. Going to be doing that Thursday, 7:30 Eastern time. Join me there. Would like to have more of you guys join on there, just because I think the more we have on there, the better conversations we have. So do me a favor, join in, stop in. If it's only for a few minutes, still do it anyway. So even it doesn't have to be for the full time, 10 minutes, that's all you got. Jump on there. So for the gold members, that's there. For the club members, I did have put a private Zoom, and private podcast let me start off there. Did a members only podcast talking about some of the impact on the Lattimore trade and one aspect of the trade that I thought was important and why they could absorb somebody into their culture at this point. So anyways, that's up as well. So if you want to become a club member, go to the Empire Media YouTube page, see the word join, click on that, go from there. So anyways, in a minute, again, I'm going to be joined by ESPN Sal Paolontonio talking about the Commanders. He's worked a couple games for ESPN already this year. He's going to be here Sunday for Sunday Countdown and then call the game on ESPN Radio. He does stuff with the NFL Matchup Show for ESPN, a long-running show that he's been on there forever. But within that show, you're going over players or teams or whatever. So he's got a lot of stuff on Jaden Daniels that he saw before the draft and seeing now, and just some good stuff on Doug Williams as well, who's up for the contributors category in the Hall of Fame. The vote is Tuesday. And the guy I'm talking to has a key role in all of this. So anyway, stay tuned for that. So a couple of things before I get to that point, talking about Marshon Lattimore. We did meet with him on today, and the injury situation, he did not practice, don't know when he's going to practice, don't know if he's going to be available on Sunday, not sure when he'll get back out there. I'm not, I think they have an idea. They got all the medical records from the Saints, but we don't know more than that at this point. His role, well, clearly he's going to be the number one guy, but how they're going to use him within that, they're going to have him travel, they're going to keep him on the side. Well, we don't know yet, and they're not going to say, but suffice to say, he can do whatever they want him to do. He can play whatever they need him to play. And then as far as, so they could they move him around? Yes. Then as far as what it means for the other corners, well, obviously even St. Jude said, and I talked about this yesterday with Bram on the live stream, that the ideal, you can see a situation where obviously St. Jude then becomes a number two corner, but you can also see a situation where they can mix and match depending on the matchups that particular week. I think that's really good. So as St. Jude said, there's more tools in their toolbox to be able to do that. You could, if you want to keep Sam still outside for now and find someone stronger in the offseason to play consistently on the outside, you can do that. Or you can mix and match with he and St. Just. You can keep Igbenogany has done a nice job in the slot. So you just have a lot more options. And but I don't think St. Just is going to be taken out of this completely by any means. So anyways, the other thing they said that they have in Lattimore, Dan Quinn called him this, Adam Peters called this, and Marshon Lattimore said he has it, and he's a dog. He's a competitor. Like that's an ultimate compliment for a player, but that's what they said. They're bringing him a dog. And I was talking to someone else who has connections to Lattimore. It's like, it's someone who loved the guy. So anyways, that's some of that. And then one of the things that Adam Peters said too is like, they were scouring. They had a number of people out there making calls, checking on players. Lattimore did not pop up until late in this process, like perhaps like in the last 24 hours. So this was not a guy that they were targeting. This is a guy that popped up late. So I don't think they're going to give up this kind of a haul for anybody but him, really, because the impact from him of guys who are available. So I think they just, because the groundwork they put in, though, it allowed them to make a quick decision when they learned that, yes, he indeed is available. So that's a kudos to them for being ready and ready to strike when it was there, because there were other teams in there for competing for him in the past. Maybe they go too slow, they're not as prepared, whatever, or maybe they overpay. But this team was ready. But again, I don't think they're doing this for just, they clearly were talking to a lot of teams, but the one that got serious was this one, because this is a guy that can really elevate your defense in many, many ways. So, and I'll get more on that. I'll talk more about that. And when I do the 5 things I think on Saturday. So anyways, join me there. With all that said, folks, that's enough for me. Let's get to my conversation with ESPN Sal Pal. I think you're going to enjoy this.
Hey, it's Bram Weinstein here, voice of the Commanders, and of course, frequent guest of this podcast, The John Keim Report. I wanted to let you all know that my show, which airs at 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. on ESPN 630, is now exclusively produced by Empire Media, my company, and is going to be distributed through our network. So I'm asking you, please, if you subscribe to this show and love this show, give mine a try as well. Subscribe to the Bram Weinstein Show wherever you get your podcasts. And many of the shows and many of the elements that are in the show will be available on the Empire Media YouTube channel. We're going to talk a ton of Commanders and other DC sports. Check it out.
All right, Sal, well, we've got a lot of things to talk about because a few things have happened in the last day. Well, one big in particular with Marshon Lattimore, but I know that you guys have also on NFL Matchup Show have talked a lot about Jaden Daniels before the draft and even this season. And then you also can talk about Doug Williams being part of the final 9 for the contributions category for the NFL Hall of Fame. So Let's start, though. We'll start with the Marshon Lattimore move. That's the big one. First off, like, what did you think of that move? But also, how does this then maybe change perception of where Washington is as a challenger to Philly and then also in the NFC?
Well, they were buyers. And the Eagles have not made a move in, as a trade with respect to this trade deadline. So I'm kind of surprised by that because Howie Roseman has always been Trader Howie. But they were buyers, and getting Marshon Lattimore is great for a lot of reasons. You need depth at the cornerback position. It's a position that's susceptible to, minor leg injuries throughout the season. You got to have some depth and you got to have some experience. And he's a really tough player. He's a good one-on-one player. He's a good player in terms of having a short memory, and with great NFL experience, who knows wide receivers around the league. So I love the move. I absolutely love it. And, their quarterback passer rating of their defense was bottom 5 in the National Football League going into week 10. They've been giving up a lot of quarterback completions and a lot of deep quarterback completions. So that's one area of this Commanders team, despite the fact that they are leading the division, that they did need to improve on and shore up.
Does this, when you look at them versus Philadelphia, how did you view these respective teams? And how much does Lattimore change how these guys match up with them?
Well, if you look around the NFL in particular, and then this matchup against the Eagles, John, what's happening around the NFL? We came into the NFL with points scored per team per game at a 14-year low. And that has been steadily climbing because NFL franchises, GMs, and coaches have recognized that you need to score more points in a league that's not scoring a lot of points. So you see the Kansas City Chiefs go out and get DeAndre Hopkins. The Steelers add Mike Williams. A lot of teams are looking at the Baltimore Ravens, Deontay Johnson, and the Ravens also added a corner. So a lot of teams are realizing that in order to score more points in the current NFL, because of the too high safety deal that a lot of teams are using defensively, that you must create more one-on-one matchups. It's almost like a 7-on-7 game. So it's crucial in order to do that, if you're going to play against it, to have as many corners as you possibly can. The Eagles create a lot of one-on-one matchup problems, even with Dallas Goedert out of the lineup. That opens up things for Saquon Barkley. The team that really leads the league in this aspect is Kansas City. Still, they create a lot of one-on-one matchups that win on third down. They're number one in the league on third down. One-on-one matchups that wins in the red zone and inside the 5-yard line. And with a guy who can make plays off script like Patrick Mahomes, like Jaden Daniels, like Lamar Jackson, like Jalen Hurts.
Right.
Now we create those one-on-one matchups and the quarterback can find the open guy. It's a lethal combination.
How surprised before this move too, like how surprised at what you've been to 2 Washington games, and I should tell people you're going to be working a third this Sunday with Steve Levy on ESPN Radio, correct?
I'm going to be doing TV for Sunday NFL Countdown in Sports Center, and I will be in the booth for the first time at that stadium with Steve Levy on ESPN Radio. Really looking forward to it. I mean, both of these teams were buyers at the deadline, the Steelers and Washington. Both of them have Super Bowl aspirations and legitimate Super Bowl aspirations. Look at what Russell Wilson has done in 2 games, 542 yards passing, no interceptions. The great thing about Jaden Daniels, let me look at the exact numbers. I mean, I think he's got 2 interceptions, correct?
Yeah.
Going into this week 10, which is remarkable. What I like about Jaden Daniels specifically, coming out of school, and what we did on the matchup show, and he was my number 1 quarterback coming out of college. I had him slightly ahead of Caleb Williams. He's a very disciplined runner. He gets first downs when he needs to. He doesn't put himself or his team in harm's way. He did have that one big hit where he suffered that little bit of a rib injury. I think he learned from that. So, but he also keeps his eyes downfield when he evacuates the pocket and remains a passer first. So I'm super impressed with that. And then deep ball accuracy is among the best I've ever seen for a rookie quarterback.
So there's, to you, based on what you saw before the draft, no surprise at what he's doing.
No, and I also thought the marriage of Cliff Kingsbury and Jaden Daniels would be great. So I looked up the numbers, and the Commanders they've got 293 rushes. Ravens got 294. Eagles are at 286. Eagles have played 1 less game, right? So Eagles have 38 yards, 38 carries per game. That leads the NFL. But the Commanders are right there. It's the same thing the Steelers did with Ben Roethlisberger, if you remember, when he was a rookie. They only ran about 20 to 25 pass plays per game, and they ran the ball a lot that year when he was a rookie. And then they went to the Super Bowl with Jerome Bettis and Roethlisberger. So I think they have the right formula, and Cliff Kingsbury has figured out what the strengths are of this offense, what the strengths are of his young quarterback, and they made the most out of it.
So when you brought this up earlier as Super Bowl contenders, that's how you view them now?
I do. I mean, you look at the NFC, and Detroit's clearly the number 1 team.
Mm-hmm.
And then after that, there's a group that the Eagles are in, certainly the Vikings, certainly the Commanders. I actually put the Rams in that group. I think the Rams are a team that's worth watching.
Yeah.
They have some difficult opponents coming up, but they're all at home, Rams. So that win miraculously in Seattle was big.
You've been around this team in years past. And then again, you were here for 2 games earlier this year. How different was the feeling when you were talking to people here compared to the past? And we know it because we were out there, but I'm curious from your perspective.
From Alcatraz to Dorney Park.
There you go.
Everybody's got a smile on their face. Nobody's looking over their shoulder. Yeah. People are secure in their jobs, and there's a lot of joy in the arena. Totally remarkable transformation. And I think it's the emotional intelligence of the GM and the head coach and the quarterback and the owner. I can't say enough about the transformation of those four people. And then the addition, the influence of Doug Williams, I think, is significant. You know, I'm a real admirer of Doug Williams. I've always been inspired by Doug Williams. When I talk to him, I learn something every time I talk to him. And I am a member of the contributor committee subcommittee. We are going to meet on November 12th, and Doug Williams is one of the semifinalists that we will discuss. And I'm glad that we are discussing him as a possible contributor in Shrinee for Canton, Ohio. It would be great to get Doug Williams a bronze bust in Canton, Ohio. It really would. And I am going to speak up on his behalf.
And I agree with you with Doug that he's a really, really good influence too, especially on Jaden Daniels. And I think Daniels takes advantage of having Doug in the building. So, you know, but when you with Dan Quinn too, are you yeah, like what do you think about, because like there was obviously a lot of talk about who else they should have gone after or whatever. He was always the guy that I heard the best things about. So I'm curious your take on him.
You know, for Jaden Daniels, it's like an astronaut who has Neil Armstrong in the building, you know, or it's, you're a young player and you got Tom Brady in the building, or Michael Jordan in the building, or you're a young military officer and you have Dwight Eisenhower in the building. I mean, you know, this is a once in a lifetime learning experience from Doug Williams.
Right.
But the thing about Jaden Daniels is he comes to the situation with a foundation in which to build upon. Yeah. One of the things that Dan Quinn said to me prior to the Cleveland game, which subsequently you had written about beforehand, but there was really not a national audience for it until that game. Right. I mean, that was the first time that we had covered them for a national audience. Right. And bringing that story to the national audience, and when he said, you know, Jaden Daniels beats me to the facility on Wednesdays. Yeah. Every Wednesday. In the dark. He's in the bubble. By himself. Throwing the football. That's impressive.
It is. I mean, how many times do you hear about that with a rookie quarterback?
Rare. Super rare. But everything about him suggests that he has a certain calmness in the moment that is, you're not going to teach it. It's inherent.
What have you thought about what Quinn has done, and just him in particular?
I have a lot of respect for him because of the cultural tone that he sets when he comes to an organization. You know, he's a door open policy guy. You can see that. He has great communication skills, great emotional intelligence. You know, the big thing about Dan Quinn is he still has on his resume what happened in the Super Bowl when he was the head coach of the Falcons. And, you know, with the Cowboys, they were good, they were not good. They were inconsistent. And the one thing that his defense needs to do is figure out the back end. And that's a problem all over the NFL right now. You want to go back to Philly. Vic Fangio couldn't figure out the back end until he got Quinyon Mitchell and Cooper DeJean to buy into the system and figure things out. And he's got a couple of really good safeties, but now he's got young players who can win one-on-one matchups and also can tackle and are tough fighters, Mitchell and DeJean both. So you got to have those players, because right now what offensive coordinators are trying to do, Arthur Smith, Cliff Kingsbury, Kellen Moore, all around the league, Andy Reid, they're trying to create one-on-one matchups. Todd Monken in Baltimore, one-on-one matchups to win for a lot of different reasons. It opens up the running game. It opens up options for the quarterback as a runner and a passer.
There was a lot of talk about Nick Sirianni, obviously. Are the Eagles in a healthy spot now? I mean, healthy not just physically, but more as an organization and with the team.
I don't know, John. I think it's tough to put your finger on that because nobody is really giving us the truth of what's happening. All we see is him jawboning with the fans after beating Cleveland. at Lincoln Financial Field and, basically ignoring 9 points, chasing points instead of taking points last week. And they almost blew a 22-0 lead against a visiting Jaguars team that was ripe for the taking. And that's on the coach. So it's a week-to-week thing. I would say this, John, however, one big important aspect of it is I think Jalen Hurts and Nick Sirianni had a conversation. In fact, I know it. It's been reported. It's been talked about. Tim McManus, our colleague, has written about it during the bye, in which they had a meeting of the minds. And it was kind of a ride or die together kind of meeting of the minds. And they realized they're in it together. And that's good because it was sort of a frosty relationship up until then.
How do you see this NFC? It's funny because I thought the NFC East would be a 2-team race, and it kind of is. So how do you see it the rest of the way?
I'm looking at the schedule, and I don't think either Washington or Philadelphia has a really hard schedule, although the Eagles have back-to-back games in Baltimore and in Los Angeles. Mm-hmm. And both of those teams, in my view, are in the Super Bowl conversation. And when you have to play Super Bowl teams with good quarterbacks on the road, that's a tough out. So, they have 2 games before that. They play in Dallas on Sunday. They got to take a flight home from Dallas. They land, probably around midnight, turn right around, go to the facility, get treatment, put in the game plan for a Thursday night game at home against the Washington Commanders. I think we will find out a lot about the Commanders on Sunday. Mike Tomlin has a great record against rookie quarterbacks. We all know what it is. Mike Tomlin is one of the most experienced and diabolical coaches against quarterbacks that there is. They have a very good defense, terrific back end with Micah Fitzpatrick, terrific front end. They just added another pass rusher, and they've got probably the odds-on favorite, or at least top 5, to be Defensive Player of the Year every year in Watt. So they get after the quarterback, and they don't break down on the back end. And for a rookie quarterback, that's a particular problem. They are 3rd in the league in points allowed, the Steelers. So this is a rubber meets the road kind of a game. I'm very interested to see how Washington does against this Steelers team. And as I mentioned, Russell Wilson does not have an interception. So in my view, down the stretch, 3 things. And you and I have talked about this in the press box in the past. 3 things really determine the second half of a schedule for a football team that thinks it can get to the playoffs. Number 1, is the quarterback turning the ball over? And you have 2 guys in Daniels and Russell Wilson who are not. Number 2, points allowed. The Steelers are much better than the Commanders in that aspect. And number 3, volume in the run game. And the Commanders are better than the Steelers in that. So I'm not talking about, rushing yards. I'm talking about rushing attempts.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's always important. So it should be a fun one, Sal. Listen, I appreciate you coming on. Always enjoy your expertise and your insight. Thanks a lot, and we'll see you Sunday. That's it for this episode. Thanks to Sal for joining me, and thank you, as always, for tuning in. I'll be back on Saturday with my 5 things I think. It's a big game, folks. Steelers coming to town. A lot of fun football ahead. So join me for the 5 things I think. I always enjoy bringing the insight for that one. So, and you Gold members, join me on the private Zoom Thursday night, 7:30. I'll talk to you next time.